Doctor's shut off. So if anything ever leaks, come in here. You got a valve. Doc, you want to check it out?
Yeah, actually, that's a good thing to point out because we're doing this on every project now. I'll get out of the way.
If there's ever any kind of leak in here, you just come in this closet. This will be an access panel. You just turn it off to this position.
This is the water for the entire office?
Entire office.
Okay, cool.
So that's our main shut off. One manual shut off. There's no. So that's really like a big thing that we started doing this year with all of our plumbing contracts. So for our plumbing subs, regardless of who they are, what type of office, any kind of medical practice, we usually have between 30 and 50 gallon water heaters. First thing we do at demo is replace any existing shut-off valves. Sometimes there's existing ones that are corroded. You don't find out until it's too late. You try to shut it off and it doesn't work. You have multiple shut-off valves and you don't know, so you shut off one of them. The leak is still going on and you're scrambling to find it. Or you shut it off and then the suites next to you also shut off, and that's inadvertent. So we want to, even if they look like, they're functional, we still take all of them out if there are multiple, replace it with one shutoff valve as an easily accessible location where the doctor, the staff, and the building managers can all find it in the case of an emergency. So in your mechanical closet next to your water heater, or right next to the main entrance if it's gonna be in like an access panel clearly labeled. Those are usually the main three places we'll put them. So in a case of an emergency, the receptionist, the building maintenance guy, anyone can find it. For the water heater specifically also, usually our standard used to be just have a drain pan with an alarm, but now we connect that drain pan alarm to a solenoid valve. So if a leak happens, not only does it alert you, it also shuts off the water automatically. And between that and of course, if there's annual floor drain. So a lot of redundancy here, and that's just strictly because if there's any kind of insurance claim we see as a contractor where the client comes back to us with an issue, it can be way down the line, 5-10 years later, but the manufacturer warranty of a water heater, let's just say an A.O. Smith commercial heater, it might be 5 years, might be 10 years, but you don't want to just rely on that if something happens like the pressure valve bursts, things that just over time might happen. It can be a lot of damages, a lot of expensive finishes, medical equipment. You don't want to deal with that. So the redundancy is a well worth investment between the shutoff valve, the solenoid safety shutoff, and the floor drain. 3 redundancies to make sure that in that kind of event, it's very unlikely to really cause an issue. And especially on a higher floor, there's more risk flooding the floors below. So also testing those floor drains and all that stuff. So I don't know if in your previous offices, Dr. Marzban, you've had, maybe not necessarily flooding, but like any kind of issues where it could be expensive, it could cause you to shut down your practice. I'm trying to think of any other things that we do to...
You can add under the sinks.
Leak sensor.
Yeah.
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 It's really up to you.
We usually do that when the landlord already has some kind of system that alerts maintenance on off hours if any of the units are leaking. So especially medical office MOBs, medical office buildings, they might sometimes require that for their tenants because the floors below are expensive laboratories that are not going to deal with that. So I think WaterBug is a common brand where either the landlord will require it or we just tell tenants, clients, hey, if you just want to buy it, we'll hook them up for you. They have battery versions and also hardwire versions. And I just tell clients, like, just choose a brand that works with an app that you like. If you like Apple Home, if you have Android, if you already have a certain, ecosystem in your house, like Alexa, just choose one that works well with that, because if you don't have building maintenance that are hooked up to that alarm system, you're just doing it on your own. You want to make sure your phone is going to ring when it happens on a weekend. Because yes, the water heater is just the main source of leaks and flooding. You have your sink drains. If any of your equipment has water hookups, any connection, any valve, any coupling is prone to be the weak point. So, you can never really be too safe with that. Oh yeah. Yeah, by the time you get the alarm, it's already, the whole heater's drained out, and at least you know that you probably need to call a plumber, but you don't have to shut down. That's the nice part. So of course the existing HVAC units. Do we want to look? So we got, looks like fan coil units.
Yep.
Okay, so typically these guys are just, fan coil units is just simply air going over a water coil. That water coil is either gonna be hot or cold, depending on if it's set to heating or cooling. And sometimes you can't control it directly. It looks like we do have some adjustment that we can do. Sometimes it's the building that sets the entire system into cooling or heating by having those fan coils either be fed from the boiler or the chiller. Very simple, which is nice. We like simple. It's just air being passed over a coil. But what we do at the beginning of each project, if it's a fan coil, we'll do water balancing to make sure that the coils are actually supplying the hot water and the cold water at the temps needed. Otherwise, it's just going to be like ambient temperature. It's not going to do its job. But they're pretty simple. I mean, it's just filters and water loops that need to be tested for temperature. They have a lifespan of 20 years, honestly.
Definitely have to follow up with the building on the heat these days, because I tried these out before and I didn't feel like
Okay. Then yeah, assuming the building would have in wintertime been in heating mode, that would definitely be a concern.
I mean, I didn't wait that long either. It could take a while.
Yeah. And usually it's a loop that's shared with all the tenants, so it'd be weird if it's just our suite that has that issue, like, unless there's a separate issue like an electronic part or
the return
the filter.
The unit's not working on the roof right now. The whole suite, or at least our suite, the whole floor.
Okay, well then that kind of probably explains it, yeah. Okay, cool. And then, with building automation systems, and I say simpler is better because we do a lot of like build outs in new high rises, and they go very fancy. Their building automation system is such that someone remotely in a different location can fix stuff like this. If the temperature of the water loop needs to be adjusted, if they want super high efficiency, like you have a medical practice that wants 65 degrees and then a regular office suite that's at 72, it'll take the heat from if there's like a heat pump system, take the heat from the medical practice and send it to the office suite that wants the heat. So it can be very energy efficient. However, that's just Well, my problem is
I was up there.
These are like 40 years old.
Yeah,
but I like that honestly because the last two projects where they had a very advanced BAS system, they were getting errors and faults almost every day.
Sure.
The signal to open up, like the unit was turning on, but the VAV's damper was closed.
I bet you these things work really well.
We like simple, yeah. I really.
Yeah, because the old stuff.
Well, look at the water heater that we have. They have all these fancy alarms and electronic solenoid valves, but no, our main preventative measure is a simple manual shutoff valve. No electronic components, no Wi-Fi connection. That is your first plan of attack. So the other stuff like the safety shutoff valve with a solenoid sensor for the drain pan if it senses a water leak, that's like extra cool stuff that, hey, in case someone can't find the valve or this and that, it'll still do something about the leak. But that's never going to be, your primary measure should never be a complicated system. That's more for the redundancies in place. So do we have a new sub-panel on this one? Or are we using existing?
It's new.
It's new? Okay, is it already roughed in, I'm guessing?
It's on the wall.
Okay.
All the way
That one's pretty,
by the IT.
That one's pretty straightforward. I mean, that's what we want. I mean, any medical practice, even if the existing suite either has an electrical panel, it could be old, it could have an electrical panel and an electrical room down the hall, but that panel is feeding multiple suites. That is complications that you want to avoid. I want to, something, one of your exam lanes, the dedicated circuit trips, so if it's not a GFI, you can't just go to the outlet and click it. You got to go back to the panel, find the breaker. If that panel isn't in your space or it's in an electrical room that's locked, you got to get building maintenance. You find that and you try to shut the breaker off and you realize you're actually shutting off a breaker for a different suite because multiple suites are sharing the same panel.
All these lights that were originally here were running off the same system, just the next door neighbor.
It's a fun little challenge for our engineers and our electricians. The first thing you got to do is clean all that up. I mean, but at this point, I'll be honest, we almost do not allow any contract to go through that doesn't have a new sub panel included in the scope, unless the suite already has a relatively new, like installed in the last 5 years, and it's only feeding that space. We're fine with that. And if it has enough spares to allow for expansion. I wondered that a lot. I mean, one of these surgical centers that I did, it was
covered. I don't do that. I don't have any. I don't pay any.
All
utilities.
included?
It's all included. Yeah, I just pay. Like I'll pay for my own internet, and that's it. Yeah, they'll clean the common spaces. They cover air conditioning. They cover electricity. They cover everything.
because they're used to most of the tenants being medical, right?
I don't know.
Because I'll be honest, I've only seen some issues where yes, like that's how the leasing is done, and then the first medical tenant to come in all of a sudden, instead of having one sink or no sinks, they're adding a bunch of sinks, using a bunch more water, using a bunch more power. Because we've done change of use. The existing office building had a 60 amp panel, and we need to put in a 250. And then the next thing the landlord's going to say is, okay, that's fine, but like you're gonna have to pay for the power because we're not used to tenants using that much. So that's great that it's set up like that, because it's tough, especially when this stuff comes up late in the game. I don't know, right now we're dealing with a lot of building owners getting a lot of acquisition, so the building management, the ownership all changes.
Yeah.
And then the new leasing agent just says last minute, like, oh, you actually need a sub-meter. Okay, well that could have a long lead time. If it's already been hooked up, that's a change order. And I have one instance where they kind of didn't tell the client at the beginning until a little later that they actually need a new Pepco meter socket. And that could have a 3-month, 6-month lead time. It's not just a sub meter itself. When COVID happened, they actually allowed us to use meter sockets for different brands to not hold up projects because the lead times were getting to a year long. So Pepco says, use my sub meter, of course, but you can use a compatible socket, that Dominion uses or someone else, because they all come from the same factory in China anyway, just a different label. It's the meter itself that they care about. But again, even the meter socket can have a long lead time. So unless the building's okay with just, installing like, off-the-shelf EMON, DEMON meter, something like that, you can run into some issues. The sub meter has been on the critical path of some of my projects. I'll put it like that. Like everything, we can build an office in 3 months, but the meter might take 3 months to arrive. That's driving the whole completion date schedule.
He's got free power, so he's lucky.
Yeah.
They only said if I
good.
change the HVAC, if I install a secondary HVAC to supplement, then they're gonna start like monitoring my power usage, and I have to kick back the electricity.
I see. Okay. So right now we have the fan coil central system, and then is there any other?
No, it's central. It's from the building.
Okay, got it. All right. Well, then now I like it. I mean, again, the simpler, the better, and your lease already takes care of everything. We will still. So we talked about pre-balancing. We did that at the beginning. Check water temperature to the water loops with the fan coil units, other stuff. We will of course also always do final air balancing. Sometimes the landlord requires it. Sometimes the county requires it. I know Montgomery County is one of those because that's where our office is. But at this point, we just do it on all projects by default, because everything was balanced and good at the beginning,
Right.
You're gonna have a new layout, new CFM and air exchange rate requirements, and HVAC demand, especially when you partition a space more than what it originally was. You close doors, the airflow is hindered. We do by default do a 1/2 inch undercut on all doors. That eliminates usually the need for a louver unless there's a very high temp piece of equipment like a compressor, which we don't have here. So typically for most medical offices, even just a 1/2 inch undercut on the door to allow for enough airflow if most doors are closed, because usually patient privacy, doors are not usually open. And that's been good enough, but that's why you want to do pre-balancing and final balancing.
Doing a high-low transfer.
We are, okay, gotcha. So we have a ceiling plenum?
12 inches. The other job is actually 12 inches off the floor on the piano closet. Goes up into the ceiling to a diffuser.
Our central system is really two main systems. We have, of course, a fan coil unit, then we have the air handlers feeding the ductwork above. And yes, I guess when we started here, we didn't realize the main trunk line was actually shared with a tenant. So Mike, if you want to elaborate on that.
Which one is
This was, I believe it was right
this?
here. Yeah.
This.
Okay.
This stuff where it
Sorry.
actually taps off. Somewhere it goes that way, it goes to other suites on the floor. But everybody uses, that's the return for us.
Got it. So that would make, but it looks like the main return goes down into a shaft. So that shaft is over there.
It's over here somewhere.
Okay. So, right. So the one we have covered up with the filter, that's the return air. We covered up just to not have dust spread while we're working. That would be the supply right next to it. And you're saying the supply, hard to see, but it does branch out into adjacent tenants.
She's actually using it too.
Okay.
Yeah.
That also makes more sense why they have the shared bill situation. It'd be really hard to
Yeah,
monitor
figure out
each
who's doing
person's
it.
usage. So it looks like based on this markup, we are going to keep the existing branches to the neighbors and then just make sure that we're still have enough CFM in our space.
Yeah, well, it's just, when we do our testing and balance.
Another reason, we do air balancing anyway, because, just because the mechanical calcs say there's enough based on the size of the air handler, the age of the air handler, and how many other suites it's serving. Air balancing is probably necessary because unless you built all the suites together, it's really hard to know exactly how many diffusers and HVAC needs the other suites have. So we don't want to just go off the mechanical calcs alone. But we can take a look at them. I mean, how?
You can always add a booster fan.
Yeah.
The pressure, increase the pressure into the suite. Right?
If air pressure is the issue, I mean, air pressure can definitely, and you have the coefficient of friction of, the longer the trunk line, the more air pressure will drop, but also how many diffusers you have, how many turns you have in the ductwork. If you have like something like MERV 16 or HEPA filters in your diffusers, that's going to choke the air a little bit, and you might have to offset that with a booster fan, inline fan of some kind, or just increase CFM from the unit directly if that's an option. But here we have one air handler unit serving multiple suites, so it's probably already at max capacity if I had to guess. But yeah, I mean, the mechanical calcs basically give us saying, we need they calculate needing 8.5 tons total cooling. So the final air balancing is to check that we actually are getting that tonnage and that the correct CFM at the terminal, which is the diffusers, is also, if it's 100 CFMs, well, what do we have? Some of our diffusers are 50 CFMs, while some of the linears are up to 200 CFMs, probably because there's less of them, so they got to compensate for that. But that again will be checked with air balancing to make sure all of these CFMs for each diffusers is actually not just the actual CFMs match the design CFMs to make sure we're not low anywhere. For exhaust fans, I mean, this is simple. I mean, we just have one for the restroom. No other exhaust fans needed for the space.
Nope.
Okay, that's nice.
So this is where the countertops are.
Mm-hmm.
You got switches. And this is the row of lights. This row and then this row over here. Run on separate switches.
Yeah, I mean, we do actually have a comment right here. For all exam rooms, confirm exact location of switch with doctor.
Right.
We've already done that,
Yeah.
seems like. Awesome. So I will...
Yeah, it is important to me to be able to turn the light switch off conveniently instead of having to get up, walk back to the door, and walk back. I can just sit, examine the patient, reach over, turn the light off, and turn back on.
Awesome. Well, it's gonna be nice when we stitch this with the final video of like actually seeing the stuff installed, seeing how much planning went into it. I believe it was remind me, sorry, your equipment vendor's name?
Marco, Austin.
Austin, right. We had the Zoom call with him early on to talk about some of the low voltage requirements as well. There's like integrated lighting as well in these units.
Yeah, so each slit lamp has its own it gets plugged in and has its own light, but doesn't read much anything else.
Is it this guy is the correct one?
So yeah, so that's one of the original ones,
Mm-hmm.
but we're going way simpler. George is just going to build me a regular cabinet, no sort of lens holders, nothing like that.
Oh, so we're going custom. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. That's nice. Yeah. Especially, I mean, if you already have a custom cabinet vendor doing other stuff,
Yeah.
we always recommend that. One of the biggest mistakes I do see clients make is having multiple third-party vendors is fine. We don't need everything under Liberty. A lot of doctors already have a low voltage vendor or a cabinet vendor, equipment vendor they use, that's great. But then when you take one trade like millwork and you have multiple cabinet vendors, what I see, for example, is they have one company just doing the reception desk. Maybe it's prefab, or maybe they just do very elegant desks. Porcelanosa is one that I see a lot that they hire just for the front desk with like beautiful marble countertops. They do great work. Then they have another vendor to do the clinical cabinetry, like in the exam rooms. And sometimes they even divide that into two by having one company just fabricate it, maybe out of state, and then a local installer put it together. So just in that example, you have 3, maybe 4 vendors just on millwork. And as a general contractor, it is our job to coordinate with all third-party vendors. This is discussed in the beginning when we're talking about the contract and the scope of work. But more players, more cooks in the kitchen. If you don't have that local installer measuring the walls and then giving that information to the fabricator in a different state who has to fabricate it to fit perfectly, because you're paying money for custom. There shouldn't be gaps. There shouldn't be any sizing issues. That's the whole point of custom. And then, of course, lead times. If we're doing an office in 3 months, you might not even get these measurements until 3 weeks, 4 weeks into the job. Now you have 1 to 2 months to fabricate and get it installed. And you're dealing with the fabricator's schedule, the delivery freight company, and the installer being free for 3 or 4 days to put it all together, and also come back for punch list, because you need all that, any issues with laminates and stuff like that need to be fixed before you start seeing patients, and the wear and tear period starts. So it can be a lot. So I like that. Simple. And then George with Burger Cabinets, they're gonna do everything. So are they handling everything from the lounge to the exam,
Everything.
reception?
Yep,
Beautiful.
everything.
Exactly what I wanted to hear. I feel like the next video, we're gonna see a lot of this office, from an interior design standpoint, the finishes come to life. That's what I'm really excited about. We have our front desk, our reception, our front desk here. Now again, these renderings, this 3D model was created way before the permit set was finalized, or at least started. So while it's more for a conceptual, visualization.
Can you interact with that?
Yeah.
At home?
Yeah.
Just walk around your new office?
Exactly. I mean, I love it.
Yeah, I've sent it to all my family and friends to check it out. Yeah, it's really fun.
So Zara must have put that into the model.
Yeah, I told her, I said I specifically want one wall where I can put up a family photo of me and my family, because my wife has that at her office.
Beverage station.
So I
all
sent
that,
her
yeah.
the picture that's from my wife's office that she put up here. We're gonna get new pictures.
If you're gonna use it, if it helps, that's great. We need an interior designer as well with a full scope. So if your interior designer is only doing material selections, they're probably not going to give you photorealistic renderings, meaning they probably don't even have a 3D model to begin with. It's all 2D. So if your interior designer is going to get renderings, you can ask them, do you use a SketchUp model? Do you use a Revit model? Those are the 2 main softwares people use, other than maybe 3D CAD, to create a 3D space off a floor plan. And a lot of so the software we use is called Enviz, and it's compatible with both Revit and SketchUp files. And what's nice is if you want something fast, you're on a budget, they have an AI model, which instead of having a human being fill in the blanks, let's just say the 3D model just has a picture frame with no picture in it. They'll actually say hey, do you want me to put optometry art on here? They have an AI version that will actually just, if you tell it what kind of practice you are, it'll fill in the blanks. If it sees let's just say an object that looks like it's supposed to be a plant, but it's just, for the sake of having a low polygon count, it's just like a square, it'll turn that into a plant. So it uses AI to guess what you're going for. So you might have several iterations, but it means that this stuff is honestly, I'm glad everyone loves it. The reality is AI is moving so fast. This is going to be pretty cheap to do soon. Everyone's going to do it. I'm just glad to be an early adopter on it and see that our project team and our clients are using it. It no longer is $1,500, another 2 weeks to wait. It can happen much faster and much cheaper. You just put in a prompt of, hey, try this material instead. I think at this point we get the new model in less than 24 hours. So it actually now aids in decision making.
Yeah.
Before, when it took 2 weeks, it's not really going to help you make a decision off the cuff. Should I do it this morning? It's more like you already selected everything, and this will be a fun little tool you get later. But
AI can actually design the whole place itself, right?
yeah, it's not going to run the job site, so you don't have to worry about job security yet.
So you don't need to design it.
For the interior designers watching this, I do think the creative side is still extremely important. The last thing you want is, or at least me as a contractor, we like building nice spaces. Every office looks the same. That is the constraints with AI. It's only as smart as what you give it. It needs a knowledge database. So I think a combination. I mean, obviously to build something, you need hands-on people, you need coordination, but also you don't honestly need assistant PMs and assistant junior designers as much, because if all they're doing is getting these product specs together based on your type of office, I think AI will take that over. So, the contractors and the designers can focus on big picture creative design. Honestly, no one really went to architecture school to design bathrooms and ADA compliance on AutoCAD. That's just what you start doing because that's what the industry needed resources for, needed people. What we all went to architecture school for is to design facades and architectural elements and unique buildings that contribute to the community. And I think that's the direction that I'm hoping it goes, where I don't need 3 PMs to handle all the submittals and drawing updates and site walks. It can be, our time can be spent doing this,
Yeah.
Actually walking the space, updating the client, and solving problems. Because on the back end, administrative duties, redundant tasks, time-consuming, mundane tasks, that's what AI needs to take care of. Because, I don't need someone to go into a SketchUp file anymore, and if all the doors are closed, meaning you can't walk through the space once it's developed, that's what we actually had to do last year when I first got in Viz. I had to go through the SketchUp model and open all the doors, because when they turn it into 3D, I'm like, this seems claustrophobic. You have to hop between rooms. So AI took care of that. And I think I love it because we, as a company, are able to let our designers design and our contractors build, not just paperwork, emails, administrative stuff, because there's so many moving parts. We just talked about how many third-party subs there might be involved between multiple cabinet vendors, equipment vendors, IT, and there's a lot of different drawings. And you saw how Invis was overlaying all the interior design drawings together. That's what it's gonna do soon with construction documents. It's not there yet. Google Gemini just released a new update where you can give it a floor plan and say, is this code compliant? But it's like very basic level. It's not at the level where we're like, hey, is this a suitable floor plan for an optometry practice on the 4th floor that wants room for expansion in the future? I think it's gonna get there in a year, and it's not gonna replace an architect, but that architect does not have to do as much digging on your unique practice needs. They already have a fundamental understanding and just, again, focus on creative design. And that's what I hope. I think in a horrible world, it's gonna turn into cookie cutter neighborhoods. Every practice looks the exact same because everyone's using the same LLM or AI agent to design. In a perfect world, it's gonna, I think, increase creative thinking and make everything unique because you have the time freed up to do so. That's the goal.